It's Adam from realitymanifestation.com, and within this video you're going to learn what the subconscious mind is, a foundation to how working with the subconscious mind differs from working with the conscious mind, and if you stay tuned to the very end you're going to learn a simple but very powerful technique that isn't often discussed, most people are unaware of, that you can start applying immediately after the video, where you can start making changes to your beliefs and subconscious mind today. If you find this video helpful, hit the like and subscribe button, as this will let us know what kind of videos you want us to make more of, and also this will help get it out to more people so they can also benefit from what's in the video as well. With that said, let's get straight into it. The concept of the subconscious mind comes from different branches of psychotherapy and is considered to be the deepest parts of our consciousness. There is also the notion of the unconscious mind that comes from psychoanalytic theory. Even though both the subconscious mind and the unconscious mind are both terms used quite commonly within self-development, they're not exactly the same thing, and based on different theories that people are still debating to this day. The main differences of all you need to know is aspects of what's referred to with the unconscious mind are completely inaccessible by the conscious mind, which is also linked to mystical and occult properties, which is not accepted within modern psychology of today. Myself personally steered more towards the unconscious mind, as there are aspects that aren't accepted within modern day psychology that explain a lot of the phenomena, what many people would refer to as a law of attraction, reality transurfing, which is common in a lot of self-development circles today around manifesting, which can be explained through aspects of the unconscious mind that is not currently known or accepted within modern day psychology, which I will go through more in a future video. But as for now, for simplicity, we're going to keep with using the term the subconscious mind, and I'm going to go now into explaining the differences between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. When it comes to the conscious mind, to put it very simply, is whatever is within your conscious awareness right now, so whatever you're focusing on. So whether you're focusing on the sound of my voice, what's on your screen. If I was to ask you, how does your right foot feel right now? Your conscious awareness would have now shifted to the feeling and sensations in your foot, which now as you start to focus on the temperature of your right foot, is there any pain there? Are you wearing any socks? Are you barefoot? All of these questions are directing your conscious awareness to your foot. So those sensations and feelings are already there, which was always already being picked up by your subconscious, which is going to help understand the differences in a moment, and I'm soon going to use an analogy. But wherever your current awareness and attention is, that's your conscious mind, and that's where your conscious awareness is. Now the subconscious mind is at the deepest roots of our mind, which often many aspects of it are completely inaccessible to the conscious mind. Our subconscious mind is constantly picking up and detecting what's all around us and storing it in the back of our subconscious minds. It is said in some theories that the subconscious mind can process around 20 million bits of information per second, whereas in comparison the conscious mind can only process around 40. So it is believed that the subconscious mind may be able to process around 500,000 times more bits of information per second in comparison to what our conscious mind is capable of. Even though there are debates to whether how much more powerful is the subconscious mind in its ability to process information in comparison to the conscious mind, it's important to be aware of this just to give an idea of how much more powerful the subconscious mind is compared to our conscious minds. Our subconscious mind controls many aspects of our bodies that we're unaware of as well. So as you're sat here watching this, or even if you're walking and listening to it, your subconscious mind is in control of how you're moving your limbs. You're not having to consciously put effort into thinking, how do you walk, how do you sit as you sat down, your breathing, your heart pumping. There's many aspects that the subconscious is constantly controlling and picking up and aware of that the conscious mind is incapable of processing all at once, or is completely inaccessible altogether. So as I asked you before about your right foot, so now if I was to ask you about your left hand, what does the sensations in your left hand feel like right now? Is it cold? Is it hot? So there's a good chance you wasn't thinking about your left hand before, and now you're consciously aware of your left hand as you're focusing on it. So that's your conscious awareness. But as always, your subconscious was always aware of how your left hand felt, even if you wasn't consciously aware. So this will give you some ideas of how the subconscious is always detecting and picking up what's happening all around you, even if you're not consciously aware of it, and also running and processing many aspects of your body and what you're doing, what's happening all around you, even if you're not aware of it. To use a few other examples, it's important you clearly get the differences between how your conscious and subconscious mind's working. For those of you who drive, can you remember a time when you was going to work and you was driving there, and all of a sudden you wasn't consciously focused on your drive, and all of a sudden you was there, you was like, oh, how did I get here? Or on your days off, you've driven by the directions you go to on the way to work, and you end up going there as a habit automatically. So that's like a subconscious pattern, which is important to understand as well, because we're creatures of pattern. Everything we do is based on patterns. So when people talk about I want to change my habits, it's basically another way of saying I want to change my patterns. Or if you don't drive, say if you've gone into a room, you've gone to pick something up, or you've gone into a room, you've done something completely different to what originally planned. You went to the fridge and grabbed, I don't know, a chocolate bar, and your original intention was just to go down and ask someone in the house how the day was, and you did something completely different because your conscious awareness, your conscious mind was taken elsewhere because something came up, a noise distracted you or whatever it was, and all of a sudden the subconscious mind had taken over. Now, for the vast majority of you watching or listening to this, I assume the reasons you're wanting to know about the conscious and the subconscious mind is so you can create empowering changes to your life, whether it's to attract and manifest more empowering circumstances into your life, whether it's to change your beliefs, how you feel about yourself, changing the action you take, or to change bad habits. But in order to do this yourself, some foundations is important to understand of how the conscious and subconscious mind works is also to realize that the conscious mind works and is influenced based on logic and reasoning, and quite often likes complex or detailed analysis of explanations to how something works or how something is the way that it is. Whereas in comparison, the subconscious mind is influenced by emotion and symbolism, and also likes metaphor. So for example, if someone was to say, oh, I've got a heavy burden on my shoulders, and you were to tell them, why don't you just pull that burden onto the ground, or place that heavy bag onto the ground and step around it, that metaphor in itself can straight away change how somebody feels because it's working on a subconscious level. You'll often find when speaking to somebody, or you may notice this with yourself, if you have a consistent problem and if you go to describe it how the person you speak to describes the problem, they'll often describe it in a metaphor which limits them from being able to take any empowering action to change it. And quite often, since it's a metaphor, it's affecting the subconscious mind, and often people are completely unaware of how it's affecting them. Or another common metaphor people may say is, I'm at the end of my rope, or I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. If you was to mention to someone, for example, it doesn't work in every situation, this is just for examples. If you to say, why don't you get a longer rope, or why don't you pull yourself further along the edge of the rope, or just don't use a rope altogether, and you'll quite often see within that individual their emotional association to the circumstance completely changes. And I'm hoping this makes sense, because a lot of it won't actually logically make a lot of sense, and the reason being is because I'm describing aspects of how the subconscious mind works, and why a lot of it is actually quite irrational. It's not based on logic. As I was saying, just to repeat it, the subconscious mind is influenced and works based from emotion, symbolism, and metaphor. So to give an example of how symbolism works and influences the subconscious mind, which is more powerful, the word swastika, or if you were to actually see it? Now, for the majority of people, if they see the swastika, they'll have a more immediate, powerful reaction internally than just simply saying or hearing the word. And that's because the symbol of the swastika is symbolic, as a symbolic representation. Now, to briefly come back to the conscious mind, as mentioned before, that the conscious mind is influenced by logic, reasoning. So when you're wanting to potentially change your beliefs, habits by using the conscious mind, quite often logic, data can help, create new beliefs, you get a new perspective on something. But quite often where people go wrong is that they just solely use data and information with logic, without using anything that communicates directly with the subconscious mind that's not backed up with emotion. It's not used for it's not represented in a symbolic way or metaphor, so it's not directly communicating to the subconscious mind. So this is quite often as well why a lot of people, when they're using affirmations, they basically unsuccessful with them because they've just solely using them. They're trying to influence through the conscious mind. And as mentioned before as well, as you can already start to gather it, that the subconscious mind is where the vast majority of where our behaviors, where the majority of what we do comes from. So as it's probably starting to become obvious to you already, if you're not already aware, if you're wanting to create any new lasting changes, it all comes down to changes that come and are made within the subconscious mind. Another very important distinction to be aware of is that the conscious mind also acts like a wall to the filter what goes into the subconscious mind. That's why you just can't be given a statement or a phrase, or you can't just say something that will go directly into the subconscious mind. So this is like a defense mechanism, so we're not just constantly changing beliefs and just acting on any bit of information that we're given. But this can also act as a barrier if you have any irrational or limiting or disempowering beliefs or habits and you wanted to change them with some new information. And if you're struggling to do so, it's because the filter of the conscious mind is getting in the way of the new belief, new habit form, whatever you wanted to manifest from going into the subconscious mind. To give an example, think of a time you've been in a debate or an argument with someone and you've had some information or there's been some clear data or facts that completely proves what you're saying is correct, and they're still just not agreeing with it, they're still denying it, even though there's nothing up for debate or discussion because it's a concrete fact. Because I'm sure this has never happened to you before with someone saying this to you, but with other people you've debated with, what you've been aware of, and you've gone to present that information to them and they're just completely denying it and not having any of it, is because a lot of the time you're communicating to them on a conscious level and they'll have a set of subconscious beliefs that's just not agreeing or disagreeing with it, as the communication's not being accepted by the conscious mind and it's being blocked and you're not being able to communicate through to them emotionally. Something else that's very important to become aware of how the subconscious mind influences our conscious minds is, as I was mentioning before, how there's so much bits of information constantly going on around us and we can't consciously become aware of them. A subconscious mind is always taking in bits of information, but there's also an aspect of our mind called the reticular activating system. I'm not going to go too much into it within this video, I'll cover it more in a future video, but basically it's filtering for all the bits of information what's important to us, and what will be filtered and come to our conscious awareness is based on what the reticular activating system seems as important, and that can be dictated by our beliefs. So if someone was to believe I'm poor, there's nothing I can do around me, and they're in a poverty mindset and with a lot of poverty belief systems, the reticular activating system, which basically an aspect of the subconscious mind, will literally filter out of their conscious awareness, so create a blind spot and not allowing them to perceive any opportunities that could be right in front of them, staring them in the face, saying you can do this to create wealth, abundance, whatever wealth and abundance is to you. So you get what I mean, it's just an example. So you've probably noticed it's much easier to notice patterns, subconscious blocks in others than it is yourself. You probably know of people yourself that have a great talent with something they're really good at, and you go to mention it to them, they just can't see it. It's because literally their reticular activating system is blocking out of the side of their conscious awareness, so they're unable to become consciously aware of that skill, that aspect of what they don't realize they're good at or what they're capable of, or the opportunities around them, unless something really powerful happens to them, something they literally can't ignore, or someone directs their conscious awareness to that opportunity, that belief system, of that thing. Now, with that said, you're probably familiar with the phrase where focus goes, energy flows, and that's true. However, what will dictate your focus and what you will even filter from where your focus, your conscious awareness is going, is based on the patterns of what your subconscious mind is being conditioned to focus on or how to perceive it. So what I'm going to go through with you now, as I mentioned at the beginning, a very simple but very powerful technique you can start doing that will be able to change your focus, become more consciously aware of belief systems that are limiting you, and also ways of being able to break those patterns and to start shifting those beliefs and those patterns of focus right now. Just before I go into this technique, I just want to put extra emphasis on, since it is so simple, don't want to overlook and think, oh, it can't be that easy, or this isn't really going to do anything that worthwhile, or did I listen to all this instruction just to hear this? I thought this was going to be the secret technique of how to start floating, open your third eye, and have your pineal gland tell you bedtime stories on how to become rich the following morning. But with that said, this technique is just simply the power of questions, but becoming consciously aware of how to use and ask yourself effective questions. To use an analogy, our brains work like a computer. Whenever you type in a question in Google, it has to come up with an answer, even if it's not empowering. And I first originally learned this from Tony Robbins, and this is a very powerful way of being able to become consciously aware what's in the subconscious and also changing and directing the focus. Whenever you ask yourself a question, your mind automatically has to come up with an answer, even if it isn't empowering. And quite often, the majority of the questions we ask ourselves are subconscious. So, for example, if you to keep asking yourself, what is wrong with me? Even if something wasn't wrong with you, your mind's going to start searching for. So, with the reticular activation system I was talking about earlier, this is like a way it's going to start directing and filtering what's going to come into your conscious awareness. So if you're asking what's wrong with me, your subconscious is going to filter out and look for everything that's around you and flag up the one or the few things that could point out that there is something wrong with you, even if it's not actually true. So it could go, oh, it's because you keep forgetting to fold your clothes. It's because you keep leaving the toilet seat up. I'm using very absurd examples, but you get the point. And where you can start applying this principle of how questions direct your focus and what's coming to your conscious awareness and influencing your subconscious is asking empowering questions such as, what aspects of myself do I like? What aspects of myself are having a positive impact on my life? And if you have a pattern of your mind going, there's nothing, ask yourself another question. What aspects of myself could I like if I was to really focus on them right now? If you form a pattern of keep asking questions or asking a different way, eventually your mind will have to come up with a different answer to what it's habitually used to. So if you're in a pattern of keep having disempowering thoughts, disempowering feelings, disempowering view on something, keep changing the question that you're asking yourself. Become consciously aware of the questions you're asking yourself. Another very empowering example of when you can use this, say if someone has done something that's really upsetting you, or you're in a very negative frame of mind in a certain situation, stop and ask yourself, what else could this mean? If you ask yourself, what else could this mean? So you get an unexpected tax bill, what else could this mean? It could remind you of, I need to be more careful in the future so I don't get a bigger unexpected bill in the future. What a gift. Or say, for example, your partner comes home from work and they don't come to you very lovingly, or you don't approve of the way they've approached you as they've come in, and your initial reaction is to get angry and start a fight with them. Before you go into that through, which might be a pattern you're currently used to doing from your subconscious, ask yourself, what else could this mean? Maybe you'll still believe, what they've done is out of order and you don't agree with it and you want to say something of it. It might end up coming up to your mind, your conscious awareness, and going, maybe they've just had a bad day. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe they don't actually mean what they meant through the words that they've said. So if you get in the habit of asking yourself empowering questions, if you ask questions that are based on how you want to feel, eventually your mind will start to come up with them. So to give you one other example, if you're finding yourself in the habit of not feeling very grateful for what you have, even though you may know deep down you've got plenty to be grateful for, or you're just really struggling, just keep asking yourself repetitively, and you might have to ask yourself the question in different ways because the same question doesn't work the same for everyone. What could I be grateful for right now? And if that doesn't work, ask yourself, what could I be grateful for if I really wanted to feel grateful right now? And eventually your mind has to come up with an answer. To go through the analogy again, just as you type something into Google, ask a question, it has to come up with an answer. And based on what you type in, basically the question you ask yourself, is going to dictate where your focus goes and the answer that your subconscious mind brings to the surface. So I'm going to end the video here for today. So there's plenty more concerning both the conscious mind and subconscious mind, and plenty more practically that can be done to start making empowering changes to your conscious and subconscious mind and your belief systems. It's important to have this foundational knowledge for everything you go on to moving forward, learning about working with your conscious and subconscious mind. As understanding these foundations, you'll be able to apply what we'll go through in the future more effectively. If you found this video useful, if you could like and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below. What questions are you going to start asking yourself now? What challenges have you been facing that you'd like to change? And I look forward to seeing you in a future video where I'll be going through more practical steps and more detail of how to reprogram your subconscious mind and how to apply what I've been going through within this video to manifest and create empowering changes into your life. And I'll see you soon.